Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, welcome back to the podcast. This is the first episode that I'm recording in 2024, and since it's the beginning of the year, I'm obviously starting it with a bang, in that I caught a bit of a cold. So should I sound more nasal than usual in this episode? Now you know why. Anyway, here's what I'm planning to do with this and some of the following episodes. I want to record a mini-series on how to be more successful this year. I want this series to focus on nutrition, training, and mindset. I'm going to record the whole thing as a single episode, but I already know that I'm going to be talking a lot. And so I've already planned to split this single episode up into at least two. So there may be a nutrition focused episode, which will be this one, plus a training and mindset focused episode. Or maybe I'll even choose to split it into three. So it will be nutrition, training, and mindset. We shall see how it goes. For now, in this episode, I am going to discuss 6 ways to be more successful with nutrition this year. Whether your goal is fat loss, muscle gain, or to improve your health in general, or to improve your training performance. I'm going to cover some basics that are always important, but may be particularly relevant for those of you dear listeners who are more of a beginner. And I'm also going to cover more advanced suggestions for those of you who have already been dialing in your nutrition for quite some time. So let's begin. Number 1 is stop doing what doesn't work long term. And long term is the key phrase here. And that's because all diets work, all of them, as long as they create a calorie deficit, even when they seem really exotic or crazy, like keto, carnivore, fasting, intermittent fasting, the cabbage soup diets. They all freaking work because they are going to create a calorie deficit. However, do they work in the long term? That's what you need to think about, because it's very tempting to try one of these approaches because often you're going to see really quick results. But do these results actually stick? That is the problem. Everybody can lose weight on keto as long as they're consistent with it for a month. They're going to see plenty of fat loss, plenty of weight loss as well, because at the beginning of the keto diet, when you remove carbs, you're going to see a lot of quick water losses, which is why when anybody who doesn't know much about keto starts it, they are always so impressed with how fast they're losing weight. It's not body fat, it's just water losses from the extreme reduction in carbohydrates. Anyway, anybody can lose weight fast with these extreme approaches. The problem is that most people, and research shows this, most people are not going to maintain that fat loss in the long term. So if you want to be more successful this year, you need to find something that's going to work for you long term. Now, importantly, that doesn't mean you cannot try one of these more exotic or extreme diets. You can change your approach as you go on. For example, if you're super motivated right now, or if getting quick results straight out of the gates is going to make you more motivated when results slow down, then you can start with a harder, more extreme approach. Like you could, for example, drop your calories by quite a bit. You could enter a pretty large deficit. To give you some random examples, just so that you can gain some perspective on this. Typically, you'll hear people recommend a 500 calorie deficit per day so that you can lose an average of a pound per week. That may or may not be true for most people, but that's a common recommendation, right? And it's considered, in quotes, sustainable. Now, let's say that you want to go harder. Maybe you drop your calories by 750 instead of 500. So you can do this, but you want to do this for 2 to 6 weeks. And then you make the deficit smaller and more sustainable after the initial 2 to 6 weeks. Similarly, you can pick any of those popular, more extreme diets like keto, or again, an intermittent fasting approach, or even the cabbage soup diet, whatever floats your boat. As long as you understand that an extreme approach only really works in the short term, and you switch to a more sustainable approach, and likely one where you get more moderate, slightly slower results over the long term, once you've gotten everything that you possibly could out of this initial extreme approach, and you find yourself starting to wobble in that you're no longer as consistent as you were in the beginning. That is the perfect time to switch to a more sustainable approach. Number 2, use the scale as a tool, not as a goal. Because if you let yourself be ruled by that freaking number on the scale, here's what's much more likely to happen. Number 1, you get disheartened. Number 2, you start changing things up in response to your weight going up one day or maybe going down another day, depending on what your goal may be. And you forget that what actually matters is the average body weight over time plus the average of your behaviors over time. If you keep mixing those behaviors up constantly, you won't be consistent enough to see results with anything that you do. Now, you may be in a place where you don't have a great relationship with the scale right now, and I have some suggestions on how to handle that. The first suggestion is that you can simply weigh yourself for the bare minimum times per week that you would need to draw an average, and I would personally recommend 3 times per week. So you limit your weigh-ins to 3 per week and no more. The second suggestion, if you really don't want to see the weight at all, is to send your coach the body weight data without actually having to look at it. For instance, if you have a partner who could take a picture of your weigh-ins, literally of the number on the scale when you step onto it, and then they send all of these pictures to your coach, or if you don't have a coach, they send the pictures to you, but only on one day of the week. So that instead of seeing the numbers every single day and having that number weigh down on you like a Damocles sword the entire day, you only get all the numbers at once, only once per week. And it's a lot harder to get caught up in any one number when you're seeing so many of them all at once. That's when you enter them into wherever you're keeping track of your weights and you work out your weekly average. As an alternative to a partner, should you not have one, you can also get a Bluetooth scale with an app. For example, I really like the Renpho scale. So this is spelled RENPHO. I'm not affiliated with Renpho in any way. I only really like their scale and app because it works in both the UK and in the US, and all of my clients are in one of these two countries. So with a Bluetooth scale, what you can do is place your phone close to the scale, then you step on the scale and you don't look at the number, but your phone records it on the app automatically without you having to look at it. So then you can connect your account to your coach's account, or again, if you don't have a coach, you can look at the data only on a single day and not even every single week. You may decide to look at the data only once every 2 weeks, for example, to limit your exposure to these numbers that right now bother you. My third suggestion is to use pictures and body weight measurements instead of the scale or together with the scale, so that you get a more accurate representation of the whole picture. You're not just using the number to track your progress, not only for mental health reasons, but also because the number on the scale doesn't tell you everything you need to know about your progress. Importantly, it doesn't tell you if you're gaining muscle or you're losing fat. And I cannot tell you how many times a client's weight didn't really change all that much, but because I asked them to take pictures and measurements every single week or every 2 weeks, we were able to see that they were gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time. Number 3, track your food in some way. You may choose to track your calories and/or your macronutrients, or you may choose to keep a visual diary with an app like Meal Snap, where you literally take pictures of your meals and snacks and upload them to the app. Or you can record your food portions without macros or calories. The choice that you make on how to track your food is going to depend on what's most appropriate for your goals, your needs, and your relationship with food at this time. However, if you're not logging what you're eating in some manner, you're unlikely to be successful. Now, it's true that you can achieve your goals without tracking. In fact, I help my clients build this skill. I recorded 2 solo episodes, part 1 and part 2, on how you can take a break from tracking for a short period of time or stop tracking for good. They were very recent, so you know that I very much embrace the idea that you can get results without tracking. But in most cases, doing this requires a sound understanding of nutrition in general and of your dietary habits in particular. And it's tracking in some way that helps you build this understanding over time. So if you've not tracked before, or you've not tracked before for long enough, you're not going to have this understanding. You're not in the right place to achieve results without tracking. Moreover, having a record of your past and future meals is the easiest way to make changes to your current diet in order to be consistent with a deficit or a surplus. Relying on your memory, if you want to have a successful fat loss phase or a successful muscle gain phase in a surplus, doesn't usually cut it unless you're very, very experienced and you've tracked for a long time and you've been through several cycles of fat loss and muscle gain in a surplus while tracking. Number 4, plan and potentially prep at least some of your meals ahead of time. My most successful clients, so the clients who get the best results under my guidance, are the clients who do this instead of winging every meal. Because if you're not planning, then hitting your nutritional targets on a regular basis becomes a matter of luck. If you're just starting out in fitness, or if you're getting back into it after a long time and you no longer have much practice with this, your best bet is to plan and track the whole day on your on your food tracking app of choice, and you do this either the night before or the morning of, depending on which one is more convenient for you. I always tell my clients, use your calorie tracking app as a planner for the future, not a diary for the past, because you can't do anything about the past, whereas you can still change the future, meaning you can still change a meal you've already tracked last minute, because it's not in your stomach yet. Now, if you don't have the time to track an entire day's worth of food, either the night before or the morning of, there are other ways to get close enough that you can still achieve your nutritional targets. One way would be to divide your calorie target by the number of meals that you want to have in one day. For example, if you have 2,000 calories and you want to have 4 meals, 2,000 divided by 4 is 500. So now you may not be able to log your meals the night before or the morning of, but you have a per meal target. You know that you do not want to exceed 500 calories in any one meal. With this approach, you can track the meal you're going to have right before you make it, so that you can adjust the portion sizes on the fly to ensure that you're within the 500 calorie limit. Another method that you can use is that you pre-log or pre-track at least the last meal of the day, so that you can adjust the portion sizes to hit at a minimum your calorie targets. Sometimes with this approach, you can even hit your protein and your fiber targets and other macronutrient targets if you have them. But it is a lot more difficult, because what you're essentially doing is you're tracking on the fly the entire day. So your calories and macros are falling where they may. And then before you make the final meal, you track it and you make sure that you're hitting at least your calorie targets. So this is the least ideal approach that I would suggest, but it can still work. And especially if your main goal is fat loss, it's a good starting point, because the main driver of fat loss is your calorie intake. So with this approach, you can at least make sure that you're hitting your calorie target. And then once you're ready to advance and start hitting your macronutrient targets as well, you may want to choose an approach that involves a bit more pre-tracking. Now, as for meal prepping, if you lead a very busy life, prepping at least one of your main meals on your days off, or using a meal prep company for at least one of your main meals, is going to be a true game changer. If you have at least all of your lunches prepped for the week, or at least all of your breakfasts, it makes it so much easier to hit your nutrition targets on a consistent basis. If you want, and if it's logistically possible, you can even have all of your meals planned and prepped for the entire week. And at that point, you really don't need to worry about anything. You literally just get the meal out of the fridge or freezer, put it in the microwave, and you eat it, and you carry on with your day. The busier you are, the more life-changing meal prep is. And even if you do have the time to make every meal and snack from scratch, I still recommend that you keep at least some food that doesn't require any prep, either in your fridge or in your cupboard in case of emergency. And some no prep foods that I typically recommend include canned fish, canned beans, cold cuts like a chicken or turkey breast, beef or vegan jerky, yogurt, rice cakes, microwavable rice, and pre-sliced breads. Now, if you're a newbie and you need to get the hang of pre-tracking your food. You need to get the hang of planning meals that fit your calorie and macronutrient targets. Here's what can really help: temporarily limiting your diet variety. Hear me out. If you only create and stick to 1, maximum 2 daily meal plans that cover all of your targets with foods that you enjoy and that you can make easily, you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. First, you don't spend hours playing what I call macro Tetris, where you're trying to come up with new meal and snack ideas all of the time, while also trying to fit them to your calorie and macro targets. Second, you don't spend hours tracking your food on the daily, because once you've created this meal plan that you're going to stick to, you can just copy and paste it into different days on your calorie tracking app. Third, actually it's not 2 birds with 1 stone, it's 3 birds with 1 stone. You don't have to deal. So third, sorry, I kept going on with the sentence after that little aside that I just told you, and it just wasn't making any sense, right? So anyway, third bird that we're killing here. I apologize to all the people who love animals. No birds were actually harmed in the making of this proverb or phrase. Anyway, third, you don't have to deal with constant decision fatigue, trying to choose what to eat and attempting to nail your targets at the same time, while also worrying about all of your other life commitments. Remember, every time you're trying to choose what to eat, to make a decision about what to eat, you are using some of your bandwidth, which is also already being taken up by work, family life, running errands, scheduling your training, actually doing your training, and so on and so forth. No wonder people quit fitness because it feels too hard. If every time you need to eat something, you've got to make a decision right then and there to hit your targets, to stick to your goals, and also you're dealing with all of the rest of your life, it sounds insane. I personally pre-track all of my meals for at least the next day, if not more than 1 day in a row, the day before. It takes so much stress out of the whole nutrition management process for me, I can't even describe it. That is why I am so passionate about suggesting this to you. Importantly, I'm not saying that you must keep the same meal plan unchanged forever. But when you're starting out, keep it for a week, maybe 2. It depends on the person, how long you might need. So at the same time, you're hitting your goals, you're seeing results, and you're gaining a better understanding of the macronutrient and calorie content of your staple foods. At that point, you can more easily spice up your diet while still hitting your nutritional targets like a pro. Number 5, have a regular eating structure and a consistent meal plan. Now, let's cover some definitions here. By regular eating structure, I mean that you eat the same number of meals and snacks most days, ideally every day, at roughly the same time of day, within 1 or 2 hours of that time. I have a whole podcast, that's episode 48, on this very topic of how to create a regular eating structure, including some scientific reasoning to explain its importance. That's how paramount I believe that this is going to be to your results. Now, by consistent meal plan, again, I don't mean that you need to be eating the exact same food every day. However, over time, you want to create a personalized menu or database of breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and snacks that hit all of your calorie, macro, and micronutrient needs. They also ideally will be meals that you enjoy and that you can make easily. As a result, you're not going to get bored. You're going to have a more diverse diet, which is so important for your gut health especially. But also, and importantly, you won't overwhelm yourself with too many choices. Because if you have a gazillion meal and snack ideas, you're going to spend all day wondering which of your gazillion meal ideas you should make for lunch today. So when I say that over time you want to build yourself a menu or a database, I also mean that you want to keep it relatively limited. Don't go crazy. On the other hand, if your eating structure looks wildly different on a regular basis, or if your meals don't include the right nutrient sources, you're going to struggle with any diet. Now, don't you worry. Not only do I cover all of this in episode 48, I also have a free, practical, 4-page, step-by-step PDF guide to help you create your own eating structure, understand the nutrients that go into a balanced meal, so you know how to build your own balanced meals, and to help you make meal planning and meal prepping easier, so that you're not spending hours in the kitchen every time you want to make something to eat. Now, if you want to get this free guide, you're going to have to DM me on Instagram or send me an email at fit2transform@gmail.com. Just tell me, hey, you know that awesome guide that you mentioned in podcast episode number 79? I want a piece of that, and I will be very happy to oblige for you. All right, we're getting to the end of the podcast today, my dear listeners, because we're on to number 6. Prioritize minimally processed foods. Now, not all processing is bad. For example, as I believe Dr. Eric Trexler mentioned in one of my interviews with him, the processing of protein powder makes said protein more bioavailable, which means that it's easier for our body to break it down, absorb it, and digest it, which arguably would result in us getting more protein available for protein synthesis. However, not all processing is good either. And a study on this that I really like and that I want to talk you through is a study by Dr. Kevin Hall, whom I really want to have on the podcast at some point, but when I got in touch with him, he said he was taking a break from podcasting. Anyway, he published this, or had it published with his team in 2019, and it's titled Ultra-Processed Diets Cause Excess Calorie Intake and Weight Gain, an inpatient randomized controlled trial of ad libitum food intake. And I'm going to have the link for you in the show notes because this is open access, so anybody can read it. Anyway, in this study, they took 20 weight-stable adults and they put them in a research facility for a whole month where all of their meals and snacks were provided by the researchers. So the researchers had control over everything, which is amazing. My understanding is that they provided 3 daily meals and then there were snacks that were available all day. Now these subjects were split into 2 groups in a random way. One group was going to receive an ultra-processed diet and the other group was going to follow an unprocessed diet. I'm using the terms that were used by the researchers, by the way. And then after 2 weeks, the 2 groups would swap. So the unprocessed diet group would move on to the ultra-processed diet, and the ultra-processed diet group would move on to the unprocessed diet. Now, what's super interesting about this study is that all of the meals and snacks provided were designed so that they would be matched for calories, energy density, macronutrients, sugar, sodium, and fiber. And the reason why this is so interesting is that they are controlling a lot of key variables that could make people eat more or less. So there's a greater likelihood that the outcome of the study is down to the degree of processing of the diet, not to any of these variables. What they were trying to study was how much do people eat if we give them an unprocessed diet versus an ultra-processed diet, if we tell them eat however much of these meals you want, and outside of the meals you can have snacks all day long, any time of day that you want. With this approach that they took to the menu that they provided to the subjects, we can say, for example, that some subjects ate more, let's say in the ultra-processed food diet, because this diet was lower in fiber or lower in protein, because the fiber and the protein were both matched. Or we can say, well, maybe they ate more because their meals look smaller, because if you look at the menus, and these menus are available online, and you compare two meals, like two breakfasts, for example, the size of the meal and the look of the meal are very similar. So not only did they eat a roughly similarly sized meal, but they also both looked quite appetizing. So we can't really argue, well, maybe the ultra-processed diet just looked more appealing, whereas the unprocessed diet was just made up of really boring food and people didn't want to eat those. Again, they controlled so many variables that we can say with more certainty than usual that the results of the study are down to the degree of processing of these diets. Now, in terms of what the results were, the outcome was that the people in the ultra-processed diets group ate about 500 extra calories per day, which is a really important difference, because if these were 500 extra calories above weight maintenance, above their maintenance calorie range, that means that they're gaining about a pound per week on these ultra-processed diets. And the author's conclusion, which you can read in the abstract, says, limiting consumption of ultra-processed foods may be an effective strategy for obesity prevention and treatment. So once again, I have to repeat that I think this study is absolutely fascinating. It was fantastically designed, and I really love Dr. Kevin Hall's work, honestly. Anyway, I am now going to talk you through an example of the two diets so that you can really understand what the researchers meant by ultra-processed food and unprocessed food. So, breakfast on day 1 in the ultra-processed diet group was comprised of Honey Nut Cheerios, whole milk with Nutri-Source fiber added to it, a blueberry muffin, and margarine. Whereas the breakfast for day 1 in the unprocessed diet was a Greek yogurt parfait with strawberries, bananas, walnuts, salt, and olive oil. And on the side, they had apple slices with fresh squeezed lemon. Now that you have these two examples on your mind, I believe you can better understand what it is that I am referring to when I use the term minimally processed foods. I'm going to give you more practical examples, but I'm really not referring to anything particularly groundbreaking. We all know what minimally processed foods are. It's really the stuff that we know is health promoting. In order to give you these examples, I'm first going to divide all food into 4 groups: fruit and veg, carbs, protein, and fats. Now, fruit and veg are virtually all minimally processed. Even if you freeze them, it's still minimal processing. If they are canned, and they are canned in their own juice, I would consider that minimally processed as well. They're slightly more processed if they are canned in syrup, for example, so not their own juice, but added sugar. As for carbs, examples of minimally processed carbohydrate sources are potatoes, rice, pasta, bread, Asian noodles, couscous, oats, amaranth, bulgur, and other grains like that, beans, chickpeas, and lentils. As for protein, minimally processed protein sources are raw meat and poultry. So I'm not talking about processed meat here, like sausages, ham, and salami, which I would consider part of the ultra-processed food group. And then in addition to meat and poultry, fish, whole eggs, dairy, soy-based products, so edamame beans, tofu, tempeh, textured vegetable protein, TVP, seitan, importantly, not spelled like the alternative name for Lucifer, but spelled Seitan, like the Japanese word seitan, and protein powder. And as for fats, minimally processed fat sources include oils, avocado, nuts, seeds, the omega-3s in salmon, sardines, and other fatty fish, and olives. So this is what I mean when I'm referring to minimally processed foods. In fact, when I'm coaching a client through how to create a balanced meal, I recommend picking one food from each of these 4 categories and then adjusting the portion sizes relative to your calorie and macronutrient targets. To put a bow on number 6, I want to clarify what I said at the beginning. I said prioritize. I did not say exclude everything else. Just like in Dr. Kevin Hall's study, the author's conclusion was limiting consumption of ultra-processed foods. They didn't say removing ultra-processed foods completely from the diet. So you don't need to fully cut out all ultra-processed foods from your diet. What I'm suggesting is that you make your diet minimally processed foods centric, with the odd exception. And that's what's going to make you most successful, because that's what's going to help you create your own version of a balanced diet centering around health promoting food, as opposed to creating a really restrictive dietary pattern where you create a dichotomy between good and bad foods, which is not something that I recommend here in case you're new to the podcast. And that's a wrap for part 1. 6 ways to be more successful with nutrition this year. Let's do a recap. Number 1, stop doing what doesn't work long term. Number 2, use the scale as a tool, not a goal. Number 3, track your food in some way. Number 4, plan and possibly prep at least some of your meals ahead of time. Number 5, have a regular eating structure and a consistent meal plan. Finally, number 6, prioritize minimally processed foods. In the next episode, as I promised in the beginning, I'm going to cover training and potentially mindset. Again, it will depend on how long it's going to take me to record that. So stay tuned. Having said that, I might record a solo episode, so I'm going to release this one, and then episode 80 is going to be an interview, and then 81 is going to be another solo episode. I like to have the alternating pattern, but it is going to depend on whether I manage to schedule these interviews that I've got lined up for 2024. For now, as always, thank you so much for gifting me with some of your time. If you want to work with me, from the 1st of February 2024, my rates are going to go up, but the clients who were on my current rates are going to stay on that same rate. So if you want to take advantage of these current rates, you don't want to delay your application. And in order to apply, just click on the link in the show notes. Other than that, I'm really looking forward to the next episode. So thank you once again for your attention, and until next time. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.